Welcome everyone again to our fifth episode, of course, of the Tuesday Night Smite podcast. I am going to be your host as always. My name is the Robbie Dog, and I'm here today again with Sabo and Psycho. And today's topic is mostly going to be just week 5 of the SPL play in the Summer Split that happened last weekend, obviously. And we're going to start again, as we usually do, with our EU games that we saw. And for that, I'm going to throw it to Psycho. Psycho, can you tell us what happened?
Well, for you, this was a really important week for two teams, especially, which was Enix and Rival. And in the first game of the day, we saw Rival actually losing 2-0 to Elevate. But they did have a sub-in for Deathwalker. The little legend played for them, and maybe that changed the course of the games. Maybe with Deathwalker they could have 2-0 Elevate.
I mean, just after watching that set, I'm not even sure if you can call that playing Smite because I don't know what Rival was doing. Just from the outside looking in, it didn't look like the little legend was the big reason why they lost so bad. But if I'm Rival, I'm not even watching the VOD or the replays of this set. I'm just trying to put this as far behind me as I can because it was pitiful. I don't know what else to say. It's just really bad.
Yeah, it was really a very disappointing set to watch from Rival because they did not look like a proper team at all, which is surprising a bit because usually they're very good, and of course the loss of Deathwalker is going to hurt them, and I think everyone was expecting that going in once we knew that he would actually not be playing, but that they would look this poorly was very surprising to me.
They Elevate played Nox support and won the game. That's about as bad as it gets.
Yeah.
I mean, going forward, is this a blueprint that other teams can use to actually beat Rival, or is this just Deathwalker not being there and then the team struggling without it? Because this, you could see what Elevate's plan was. That was to put Ice Baby on the back foot and keep him behind, and we know that without that jungle pressure, it's very hard for any of the lanes, let alone a new solo laner, a substitute solo laner, to have any kind of success. So, going forward, is this something other teams can look at and say, hey, we can beat them like this by shutting down Ice Baby? Or is this like Deathwalker not? Is Deathwalker that important to the team?
Well, actually looking at the games, I thought the reason, or some of the reasons why Elevate were able to shut down Ice Baby was because of the rotations from the solo lane. So maybe with Deathwalker, they can actually negate that a bit, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think increasing pressure on other lanes in the way that Deathwalker does can play a part in making your jungler more safe in their own jungle and in their farming. So I think with Deathwalker, it's not going to be as easy to potentially shut down Ice Baby. I also think with Deathwalker, you have another pillar to stand on, sort of when Ice Baby is being shut down, because Deathwalker also has the ability to step up and carry this team as well, obviously. And so I think it's going to be harder. It would be harder to shut down Rival if they had Deathwalker. Still possible though, but how much of a difference it would make is a bit hard to really tell.
I don't want to put the entire blame on the substitute because the Little Legends numbers weren't horrible. They weren't great, but they weren't the worst we've seen from a substitute before.
Yeah, well, they weren't any more horrible than those of the other players, really.
Yeah,
Right.
Wolfie really struggled in the mid lane. I don't know if that's because of Ice Baby not having jungle pressure that he would with Deathwalker there, or if it was something else. But Wolfie, like the entire team, looked bad. Wolfie stood out for me because you lose. What Nilissa played? She played a Scylla, and what she played in the other game, like
Isis.
Isis. Two very different types of gods when it comes to lane pressure. Isis is that high lane pressure. Scylla takes a little bit more time to get up and ramped up and going, and he lost handily to both of those picks from Nilissa. And so yes, the jungle pressure might have had something to do with that, and the lack thereof could have really hurt Wolfie, but his play was just not up to what we're used to seeing from him.
Yeah, and I think we've seen Elevate and we've seen Rival and their specific members be a bit inconsistent at time. I like to refer back to their first game against Obey, I think it was, where they only got one kill and also got completely wiped out in less than 20 minutes, I think. So we've seen them have games where they were playing below their usual level, right? So I don't know how much we can take away from this, if this was just Wolfie playing down, or if it is a new trend towards a low level of play from them overall.
I would be tempted to agree with you as far as the inconsistency goes, but you brought up Obey. Obey and Elevate are wildly different, opposite ends of the spectrum as far as, who you expect to struggle against. Elevate, even though they're a team on the rise and they're getting better, Obey is probably the best team in the world. So to struggle against Obey is one thing. To get slaughtered, or whatever you want to call this, whatever this was, against Elevate, I don't know if those two are comparable, because
well, I think the sub plays a role there as well, obviously, because your team's now just not going to be as good as your regular team if you have a sub. Otherwise, he wouldn't be your sub.
Well, another thing here is Rival actually split with Obey at their first, where they F6 at 10. And now they get 2-0 by Elevate, and both games were really dominating by Elevate. That's really not the same.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is their games against Elevate were in some ways comparable to their first game in the set against Obey. And it could just be there's a certain likelihood that they just had two of those games in a row against Elevate.
That is definitely a possibility.
Question is just how likely it is, obviously.
Well, they did secure their spot at Dreamhack with the next set of the day, though.
That was coming into this week. It was going to be hard for Enix to get into DreamHack over Rival, but that was just because they have the 2-0 energy. Nobody, I would say, a majority of the people that follow the SPL would say that's very unlikely to happen. For Rival to get into DreamHack this way, not something that I would be excited about if I were a Rival fan.
Well, just looking at what Deathwalker said, he was really, even though he wasn't playing, he was really cool about it. calling himself the MVP of the set. So I don't think it affected their mentality that much, the loss.
Well, let's flip the coin real quick and say congratulations to Elevate for avoiding regulations, because they were expected not to be in relegations this time, but the Poppies did make it close on them. For a team like Elevate to secure their spot outside of relegations, I think that's good for their mentality going forward, because you can say that this current roster is starting to work and it's starting to find its stride, and I'll talk about this with Noble later because they did the exact same thing Elevate did, but being able to put relegations behind you and have the summer to really relax as a team and not have to worry about, am I going to be in the SPL next split or not, that's huge for the mentality of a team, and congratulations to Elevate.
Yeah. So just to reiterate the point we're making about relegations and Elevate, the situation before the week was that if Poppies had 2-0'd the Burrito, and if Elevate had lost both of their games against Rival, they would have both been at 5 points, I think. Yeah, 5 points, and would have therefore had to go into a tiebreaker, because Elevate obviously split with Poppies in week 1, I think it was. Not entirely sure.
It was week 1. Yeah, but it was week 1.
Yeah, so they split with them, and they would have had to go to a tiebreaker and beat Poppies there again to avoid relegations. But with their 2-0, they were already guaranteed to make it, to stay in the SPL, obviously.
Weren't they guaranteed with a split as well?
Yeah, of course. They just needed 1 point because Poppies could only get to 5, which they already had before that day. But that's what we mean when we say they avoided relegations. Like, it wasn't hard to avoid relegations in this scenario because they had to lose 2-0 and Poppies had to 2-0, and then Poppies had to win the tiebreaker game. But it could have been a possibility.
It's still huge for the mentality of this team and players like Jermaine and Dardez and No Numbers to be able to not have to worry about whether they're going to have a SPL spot next season or next split or not. Just knowing that you're going to have a shot at Worlds, whether you perform well or not, it all starts with being a part of this fall split, and they're already guaranteed to be a part of the fall split. So they give themselves a shot at Worlds, and that's the main thing.
Yeah, I think you can get some positives out of this, obviously, because you don't have to play, you don't have to risk your spot, and you can look forward now, because now they have time to prepare really for the fall split. A lot of it, because other teams are going to Dreamhack, obviously they'll have to prepare for that first, for the other NA teams that they're going to be facing in the terms of the EU teams, and meanwhile the 2 teams that didn't make it and don't have to go through relegations and don't have to focus on anything right now can fully put their intention towards the fall split and look at how they can potentially move up a bit, because it's worth mentioning that Enix and Elevate both were not many points behind making Dreamhack, right? Rival themselves are only sitting at 9. They're only in Dreamhack over Enix because they won the head-to-head. Because Enix also sitting at 9 points and Elevate sitting at 8. So they were very close if you look at it that way, and that's impressive for a team like Elevate to get that close to Dreamhack with what is essentially a renewed roster.
And you pointed something out huge to me. I mean, they elevate 2-0s the Poppies and gets all 3 points. Now they're at 10 and they're in Dreamhack. So for it to be that close, where one game determined whether you made DreamHack or not. For a team like Elevate and the struggles that they've had in the past, that's a huge step forward, and so that should help them going forward. To realize that they were literally one game away from making it at the DreamHack.
I don't think anyone expected Elevate to be this close when the split started. Like the top 3 teams were pretty. We all agreed on the top 3 teams, and then the rest. Then the 4th team was between Rival and Enix, obviously. But I actually didn't think that Elevate would be this close.
Yeah, I think that is more down to us rating the top EU teams or the middle of the pack EU teams a bit higher than they actually turn out to be, honestly. Because obviously with Rival losing 2-0 to Elevate, it shows that they're not untouchable by a team like that, and that the matchup between them is closer. And I think that's the main difference in performance level that we see, is not that Elevate's drastically overperforming necessarily. It's more that Rival and Enix were underperforming a bit. That's why it got so close.
For me, it feels like it was actually both. Like, I really thought that Rival and Enix would be the top teams, and Elevate wouldn't be really good. And well,
yeah, but I think me and Sabo disagreed with that. Like, we always had sort of high hopes for Elevate, me especially once they brought in Cherio instead of Nika. And from that point on, go ahead.
Yeah, they brought in Cherio. I think we made up our mind that Elevate's going to be was going to be a lot better than what they previously were. You were, I think you were expecting them to be wait till the fall to make their move. I thought that they could probably make a run at DreamHack if everything falls right for them. So we agreed that they were going to be better. We didn't agree on the timing.
Yeah, well, by better I mean better than we expected them, honestly. Because I don't necessarily think that was the case, as I just explained. But I think they still have that potential to improve going into the fall, and especially now that they're going to have a lot of time to prepare for that split, and that it could propel them to a regional spot.
Yeah, super regionals, very much realistic possibility for Elevate now. Even if they don't, if the format stays the same as it did last year, and they have to go through the gauntlet to make it to the wild card, Enix is one of the teams that you can look at as maybe coming out of that European gauntlet and being that European wild card in the wild card rounds. I don't think you necessarily give it to Rival or Enix anymore. You have to count Elevate as a possible team that can make a run at making it into Worlds, or at least making it into Super Regionals.
Yeah, and from that point onwards, obviously, Worlds would be the goal. But that's still a long ways away. So, what else do we have to talk about in terms of EU?
I guess the last game of day, Saturday, the big one for me, because for me the top 2 teams in Europe were facing off, and I honestly didn't expect Obey to 2-0 Dignitas after what Dignitas showed us.
Yeah, I think I and most of the people that I've seen talk about it were expecting a split between those 2 teams, because the entire top of EU has shown to be very close together, the split. I mean, we pretty much only saw, I think we saw only 2-2-0s between the top 4 teams, which were between, I think, Energy and Rival, and now Dig and Obey, obviously. Correct me if I'm wrong about that, but I think that was the case.
Energy and Rival definitely did not go 2-0.
I think it was Dig Rival you're thinking of. I think Dig 2-0 to Rival. But what's this do to the mentality of Dig? You have such a great split, and then the team that you have struggled, the one team you have struggled to beat on a consistent basis, or at all. I don't think they've beaten Obey at all this year. 2-0s you again.
So it was Dig versus Rival 2-0, by the way. So you were right. But yeah, what I think it does is it could be discouraging, but I'm not entirely sure if it's gonna be for this roster of Dig that we've seen, because they don't seem like a team that would get demotivated by one lost best of 2, honestly. Just because they have such a solid foundation already built that they can keep building upon, and that obviously works for the most part.
Well, I'm not just saying. It's not just 1-2-0. It's Obey. Obey did sweep them in the spring finals, right? It was 3-0 for Obey.
No.
I don't
wait,
think
what?
so.
It was 3-2.
Did it go to 5? I thought it was 3-0.
I'm pretty sure it went to 5.
I'm gonna check real quick. Just give me a couple of seconds.
And I believe Obey 2-0'd them in the spring during the split in the spring.
Yeah. So they went 3-2 in the finals of Smite Masters.
Okay.
Yeah,
but you haven't beaten or split with this Obey team yet. So that can really affect Dignitas going forward. They do seem like a bunch of lighthearted guys, and that are not going to take one loss too serious or too much worse than another one, but not finding any kind of success against Obey, saying, that could always be in the back of their mind that we're the number 2 team. We're not the number 1 team like we thought.
Honestly, I think a lot of this specific loss came down to the drafts, and that is something that they can continue to improve on, obviously, because they still have time to practice now, and they now know more about the kind of picks that Obey works well with than they did before, and part of that lack of knowledge is, I think, what caused this loss. Because obviously we saw both sides bringing out the Osiris Bologna as a combo, and only Obey finding success with it. So that is an area that they can now try to avoid when playing Obey, giving them those 2 picks, and it is an area that they themselves can improve on. Just keep practicing with those 2 picks in jungle and solo, and step up their game.
Well, if I can have a say about this, to me it feels like Dignitas was so, if I can say, impressed by Captain Twig on Osiris. They wanted to take it away from him, and they didn't really play as well as he did. I mean, it wasn't that they wanted to pick Osiris and Bologna, but they had to pick Osiris and Bologna to stop Captain Twig from getting it.
Yeah, but I think there are other ways you can deal with those 2 picks if you really have to, by just simply banning them, because you have bans, right?
Also, the first game, Zeros played the Morgan in the mid lane once again, and OB actually gave the Morgan the first loss in the mid lane, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, on the EU side.
Yeah, on
Yeah,
the
I think
EU side.
Irwin had lost the week before.
Yeah. But that
that's
was a
another
thing.
That's another thing that I think is going to be something important going forward, is whether or not teams are going to use a ban on the Morgan, because I think we've seen her enough now that teams are starting to realize what she can bring to the team, or stealing somebody's ult, or having two of one ult on your side, or her value shoots up from here. And we talk about Bologna, Osiris banning those two or banning one of them. Well, going forward, if the Morgan continues to be on the rise like I expect her to be, do teams start using a ban against the Morgan and then giving up Bologna or Osiris?
Yeah, I could definitely see that happen. We actually did see a Morgan ban in this set. Surprisingly enough, from Obey's side, they banned it in game 2. Because it's obviously getting stronger as the game progresses, because mids are just more getting used to it, and I guess mids are starting to learn how to deal with the other gods that you can turn into as Morrigan. And
well, I'm actually gonna.
I just want to finish something real quick. I just want to brag real quick, because I predicted Morrigan's ult, or Morrigan being OP, when she came out. Just want to have it said. I'll find the post I made.
All right, you can go out about Morgan. I want to go about Noble when we get to him. I was right about Noble all along.
Okay, I'm gonna quote actually members of Team Dignitas about Zeros. His gap pool is so limited you can count it on 3 fingers. And I haven't really seen anything change from Zeros. Basically just like Chronos, Soul, and the Morrigan all split again.
Yeah, but if you play Morrigan, you play all the gods. So his god pool is actually all the gods.
Are you not losing?
Why doesn't he just pick all the other gods?
Why switch it up if you're not losing? I mean, lose one game to energy and then you get 2-0 by Obey. I mean, you won every other game up to those 2 games.
My point being, they were actually talking about this. Why they lost the spring finals was because Zeros had a god pool that was so limited, and they are not changing it against Obey again.
So what you're saying is Obey knows that Zyros can only play the 3 gods, and they're using their team comps around what Zyros trying to do. All right, I got you.
So Obey's just masterminding the game right now.
Actually, the Osiris pick, you can see the Morrigan when she's stealthed with his 3. That's also a good Loki counter.
Yeah, too bad Loki's not in the meta.
That tether reveals all hidden gods or all stealth gods, so it's not surprising for it to be able to reveal Morgan too. So. But we're starting to see more of the Morgan come into the meta. Zyros, Lobster, pretty prime play it. Irwin is starting to pick it up. A couple of the NA mids are starting to look at it as well. So it's just the rise of the Morgan. You called it, but
yeah, and I think if even more mids start picking it up, then we are actually going to see it become a top priority pick. Because
we'll see. The thing is, it's starting to pick up in the other regions of the world, because I was watching the Oceania finals this past weekend, and the Morgan was in almost every game. Like, so other regions are starting to realize what she can bring to the team.
Yeah.
And she can bring everything. Because she's everyone.
Yeah, the reason I think why she is going to be overpowered is because she has that amount of versatility that no other god can really match. Because if we lived in a theoretical world, right, where you could always know the exact situation and always judge it perfectly properly, you would turn into the god most suitable for any situation as Morrigan in all the right situations, and you would always win. Or at least you would always not lose as hard as any other pick. And I think that makes her incredibly valuable.
So basically what you're saying is you need to know how to play the Morrigan to play her effectively.
Yeah, I think that plays a big role. You need to obviously have skill with the god itself, but you also need to know other gods really well. You need to be able to judge a situation really well. But that is something that pros inherently do have, because otherwise you do not become a pro if you have poor judgment, in my opinion.
Yeah, okay. Like the last week when Ray judged the distance of the Vulcan Ultimate wrong and missed the melee creeps.
Hey. It's Man Ray.
We're not talking about Flashpoint right now, okay?
Look, here's the thing about Flashpoint. They're gonna get relegated, and then they're no longer gonna be pros, so they are retroactively not pros.
Well, we'll talk about them because there's something I want to bring up to you guys about Flashpoint later. But let's finish with EU first. We kind of got sidetracked on the whole Morgan discussion, but review who's going to DreamHack, just so our listeners know.
Yeah, so obviously the teams going to DreamHack, if you've been paying attention to the Summer Split, will be Dignitas in first place with, I think, 16 points. Behind them, just trailing really closely, Obey with 15, Energy with 13, and obviously Rival with 9 points. And those 4 teams will be representing Europe, the best region in the world right now, at DreamHack.
Like the only region, right?
Yeah, the only one that matters.
I can't disagree until an NA team actually beats an EU team. So
yeah, you're gonna.
Here.
I think you're gonna have to wait a long time for that to happen. But we'll see.
I'm calling it now. I'm calling it now. You can put me on. You can record this and loop it for me later. An NA team is going to win the Worlds this year. Calling it now. 6 months out, an NA team will win World Championship in Smite this year.
See, that is so far away that I'm not gonna try to make a counter prediction.
Last year, there were 2 EU teams at Worlds and 2 EU in the finals. Like, do you still want to make that, like, NA is going to win Worlds again?
Yes. I will.
No.
I will say it. I will say it. NA is going to win Worlds this year.
What I will say, which is a much easier prediction to make, which is also kind of grabbing ahead of soon-to-be-released episodes, is that no NA team is gonna make it to the semifinals of DreamHack.
Brazil is going to win Worlds.
Maybe.
Okay. Well.
Yeah. Okay. Let's stop with the NA bashing.
They're going to be sorry come January.
Yeah. Sure.
I'll get to gloat in January. You guys will have to sit back and take it.
Hey, if you do get to, you will have deserved it, because you're suffering right now, and anyone who suffers that much deserves to have the upper hand once.
Well, let's just go ahead and jump into NA this week, shall we?
And I just want to actually one last thing about the how we were talking. I think Robbie actually said who will get the DreamHack predictions wrong will get yelled at. And for EU, me and Robbie had the same predictions. Didn't make it, and Saba actually had all of them right.
Yeah, but Sabo, he chickened out by picking 2 teams. That doesn't count.
No, I go back to listen to the recording. I said the winner of the rival Enix set would make it,
but you
and I called it.
Oh shit. Okay.
Right on, and they made it, so I was right all along.
So it's like 4.5, like 3.5. Excuse me.
Yeah. So it's 3 for us and 3.5 for him. So you win.
I'll take the half. I'll take half the point. I'll take the half-point lead. That's fine with me. 3.5 to 3.
Yeah.
That's fine.
And I actually won something.
Won't be the only thing. Trust me. All right.
Let's not go into that topic again.
Let's not get sidetracked anymore. Let's go to NA. And
Like,
NA was probably the more exciting this week because there was a lot more on the line. There wasn't just 2 teams for 1 spot. It's 5 teams for 3 spots. And so we'll start off with the first team to secure their spot. And the first team to actually play this week was Trifecta 2-0ing ALG. And now if ALG had in turn 2-0 Trifecta, ALG would still have to have a United split, which they did, but ALG didn't 2-0, so that's kind of a moot point. Thing is about ALG is their great start to the split was made, was just canceled out by their lackluster ending. And talking about ALG to start with, which I think starting off the split was the much more hyped up team because they did so well in the beginning. I see roster changes. I don't see Weekend sticking with this current roster going forward. I think Cyclone Spin is pretty safe. I don't think Weekend and Cyclone Spin are getting a divorce anytime soon. But I definitely see the other 3 possibly being switched out for some other names.
Well, who do you think is a suitable replacement, or would be a suitable replacement for who exactly? Because I don't know for sure if you can put much of a blame on any specific player on Allegiance.
I
once
wouldn't.
Flashpoint gets relegated, the pro players available.
Well, I agree that no one person is to blame, but I don't see somebody like Weekend sticking with a roster that has proven not to work. So I could see them making changes, and I think the first one out the door is probably Matt Yankee. Not to say anything bad about the guy, because he did have a fairly surprisingly well split. We made fun of Zyros at only having 3 gods in that mid lane. To me, Matt Yankee only has 2, and that's Soul and Isis. So that lack of being able to expand your not only your god pool but your strategies and stuff from the mid lane is what telling me that Matt Yankee's probably off the team with a fall split.
See, there's 2 questions I'm asking myself there, and first I want to say I can probably agree with Weekend being the type of player that is gonna look for roster changes if a team's not working immediately. And the question I just have is, or the questions I have are, they're gonna have time now or Matt's gonna have time now to improve his god pool a bit. because they're going to also have the same amount of weeks off that we mentioned when talking about Elevate to sort of improve themselves individually and as a team. And who would you replace Met with? Because that is the bigger issue I see with kicking him out, is I don't see a suitable replacement for him that would actually work.
Well, the first one that comes to mind is Venenu from the SPL Gatekeepers, because he's obviously played mid lane for quite some time now. He has played with Weekend in the past on a previous ALG spot, and so there's a fit there. They already know each other. They know Venenu has a much more experienced mid lane career, or has more time spent in the mid lane. So there's that. I could also see somebody like the best, if he's available, make there being a fit there. We'll have to see where the other roster changes come from, but just two off the top of my head, Venenu and the best could actually replace Matt Yankee on the team.
Well,
I don't think there's any reliable mid laners that are free agents right now, so it would have a different NA team. And I don't think we will see Incan going back to the SPL, especially not with Weekend.
Yeah, he's not gonna let himself get triple backstabbed. But the issue with Best that I see is that I think he's gonna end up on a different team potentially, right? Because I think all of the top teams have some potential to improve in the mid lane, and I think he could find a home on any of those if Dreamhack doesn't go well for them, obviously, which I don't think it will. But we've seen like we talked about last week about how Scary D was potentially just allowed to stay on LG due to his performance in the Spring Split and at Worlds, and I think it's up for discussion again now, or it might be, or it might be once they face EU opposition again, if they lose again. About the discussion about Basking switching back to solo and then bringing in a new mid, for example. That could be a place where Best could find a home, honestly.
When you're talking about this, we could also see a player switch from their original role to mid lane, as we have seen twice in NA. Basking going to mid and answer as well.
Incan making the transition on mid as well.
Oh yeah. I definitely see that possibility.
Right, but that's why I'm not sure if Best is going to find a home there. And as far as Venenu's concerned, I'm not sure that he's going to be any better than Matt is right now. Because, as I said, Matt has time to improve some more, and we could see more coming from him.
Venenu's current team's the SPL Gatekeepers. He's on the team with Pain Nevian and Day to Remember, Brave, and Mando Warrior is the solo laner. So I expect, just by watching them play a couple of games and just by who's on the team, I expect them to beat Flashpoint and make it into the SPL themselves. So it's just, does Venenu want to stay with that team, or is if ALG comes along and says, "Hey, would you like to play mid lane for us?" That's another possibility. But I see Venenu actually being in the SPL next split, one way or the other.
By the way, I think Matt Yankee moved to mid before Worlds even, so I
Yeah,
didn't count him.
Yeah, he and Snoopy switched on Soar for the Worlds, but that was like weeks before Worlds, and we saw what it did to Soar as a result. So
I think it was late December.
yeah, 2 weeks before Worlds.
Yeah. Anyway, so what were we talking about? I lost track again completely.
ALG's terrible ending to the split. Because we all three, after that first week, all three of us had them making Dreamhack. And now, not only do they not make Dreamhack, but out of the 5 that had a possibility coming into the week, they were the furthest from Dreamhack.
Yeah, they actually finished behind Noble, even, who didn't even have a chance to make Dreamhack anymore in the last week. So it was definitely a disappointing split for them, looking at how it started and how it ended, obviously. Just because they were looking like a top team after splitting with Luminosity in week 1. And I don't think we ever saw them play as well again as they did during week 1 and 2. So it's just very disappointing.
They went 1-5 to end the split. After 2-0ing E United, they get 2-0'd by Noble. They get 2-0'd by Trifecta, and they split last week with AI. So they went 1-5 to end the split. You got 1 point in the final 3 sets of your split, and no matter how good your start is, if you get 1 point in those final 3 sets, you're not making it anywhere, let alone making it to Dreamhack. I think if team, let me look at the standings real quick. I think if Team AI had actually 2-0'd LG, if Team AI had 2-0'd LG, Allegiance is no longer looking at Dreamhack. They're in relegations. There's 1 point separating Allegiance and AI. So to fall that far in the span of 3 sets, that just tells me that Weekend is probably going to be looking to make roster changes because they narrowly avoided relegations themselves.
Yeah, that is just absolutely crazy. Right? They could have been. We were touting them as top 2, and they could have been bottom 2. That is something insane. I don't know how else to describe it, honestly. I have no words for how badly they played in those last 3 weeks as compared to their performance in the first 2. I honestly think this is the biggest drop of performance that I have ever seen out of a Smite Pro team.
Yeah, there's not much else to say about this, really.
Well, let's just move on to Trifecta then. Finally, we saw Snoopy and Eonic get back to their Season 2, one of the best duo lanes in the world, play. And now they're going to Dreamhack. They're definitely one of the NA teams because we've seen Space Station, formerly Soar, and we saw Luminosity both make the Spring Masters and just not have any success. So Trifecta is the team coming out of NA that nobody on EU has seen yet. So Trifecta with Snoopy and Eonic playing so well. Sino Shore's probably the best jungler in North America right now, if not the second best behind Homie Faye. So this is a team that can make some noise at DreamHack, just because not that they're so much better than Luminosity or Space Station, but because they're a team that nobody from EU has seen live, has had to play live yet, and so that could be like a wild card there for Trifecta to maybe pull an upset.
They're an A.
But they're an unknown commodity. That's the point. Like, Space Station Gaming and Luminosity, like I said, both made it to the Spring Split or Spring Masters finals. Or Spring Masters, not Spring Masters finals. But, you know, the EU teams have seen the other two NA teams before. Trifecta's that one team that they haven't seen yet. You know, and with Snoopy and Eonic playing so well right now, Sino Shore playing pretty damn well good himself. You know, it could be a team that could find an upset. Maybe let's see who they face, but maybe if they face off against Rival, like, given Rival's recent performance, Trifecta might pull the upset off of Rival. Right now, with how Rival played, right now anything's possible.
Yeah. So first of all, I don't think they're going to be facing Rival. The seeding won't really make much sense, right? Seeding the third place. Wait, they were second place, actually. Wait. I need to check this real quick.
They were second place.
Yeah, so it still wouldn't make too much sense seeding second place NA against fourth from EU. But it's more of a possibility now. Anyway, I think the issue with making that kind of prediction is, have we seen anything out of Trifecta outside of the Vulcan ADC, obviously, that was so out of the ordinary that you really think EU teams aren't going to be prepared for it?
Well, no, but there's a difference between actually playing a team and then just actually watching film, game footage on them. You can make some strategies about a team just by watching film, but until you start playing them, until you actually have a live match against them, you can't really make a good enough game plan until you actually see them live, or until you actually play them in a live situation. So, Trifecta ended the split really well. And it might just be the NA person in me. I'm seeing, out of the three teams going, I see Trifecta being able to make some noise at least, to pull off an upset. Like I said, we don't know what the seedings are going to be. It could be Trifecta versus Rival. More likely it's going to be Trifecta versus Energy, because Dignitas, the number one overall seed, because they have so many points, or they had 16 points, and nobody else finished above them. They would probably get the Brazil or the South American team. Trifecta, the number Space Station would get Rival, and then Trifecta would get Energy. That's just speculations because we don't know the seeding, but Energy versus Trifecta, I don't know. It could be something. It could be something interesting to watch. I'm gonna take it back and say that Trifecta is going to beat Energy, but it should be a fun set to watch. And I think Trifecta could possibly find, if it's a best of 5, find 3 wins.
Oh yeah, I think the quarterfinals are best of 3 and semis and finals are best of 5.
Well, there you go. You only need 2 wins to make it into the semifinals. So
yeah, but 2 wins against potentially NRG, which is going to be hard. And something that I would like to talk about with Trifecta, and especially with Sinossure's performance, is going to be the fact that they're probably going to be facing Energy. Because obviously you have another jungler on the side of Energy that is incredibly good, right? And it's going to be tough against him. It's going to be hard for Sinossure, who's really not faced that caliber of jungler before in NA, to suddenly potentially have to go up against Adapting and try to contend with him. So I'm not sure how his performances in the NA Summer Split are gonna really transfer to Dreamhack.
When you just look at the two teams in side by side, they almost mirror images of each other. Demi and Key, very similar in their play styles. Setting up for their team is not necessarily being the star of the team, but being the setup person. The Adapting and Sure play very similar play styles. Adapting's, I've already said Adapting's probably one of the better junglers in all of the world, but very similar play styles. Herwin and Yemen, very quiet players, pretty much do the same thing in that mid row, and that's just play for the team, not trying to be superstars themselves. And then the duo lane. I mean, Snoopy and Eonic versus two-time world champions in Irafra and Melito. I mean, they're almost mirror images of each other in my view. Energy has a little bit more success on their side, but like as far as teams being almost identical, just by their play style, Trifecta and Energy are very similar teams.
I have to agree with Robbie. Like, when you're the best, there's no one to. There's no reason to. Not no reason. Well, not no reason, but there's no way you can really improve more. Like, you're already the best, and if Sinosure faces someone better who he couldn't face in an A, how will he play against that? Big thing.
Yeah, that's just what I'm. That's just.
Adapting has fallen a bit at the start of the split, and the others grew better. He also had to improve himself, and that made him a better player again. Feeling.
Yeah, I think what worries me about Trifecta potentially facing off against Energy is it's just that I would not rate any specific player on Trifecta higher than their specific counterpart on Energy, which is worrisome, obviously. So I think it's going to be hard for them still. Like, that is all I can say. Because right now predictions are going to be a bit wonky because we've never seen those two teams play. And we don't know enough about them to really make confident predictions. But I think the only prediction worth making is that it is going to be hard for Trifecta and for any other NA team that is potentially going to be facing Energy, Obey, or Dig. I think they might have a chance against Rival, especially if they show up in a poor state, like they did against Elevate or against Obey in their game 1 of the set. But outside of that, it's just going to be hard. But that is really also reaching a bit far already, because we're going to go more in depth about Dreamhack in a later episode, obviously. Right now, I think we should really just talk about what happened in week 5 and some potential stuff as well. So, Sabo, do you want to wrap Trifecta up, or do you have anything else to say?
I think we pretty much wrapped it up. I mean, Trifecta had a great ending of the split. They were able to make it to Dreamhack over some of the other teams that people would have thought were in a better position, like ALG, like an E United team we're about to talk about. So, just a good ending to the split, and a solid split overall helps Trifecta make it to Dreamhack. We'll see what they can do, and we'll bring that up later. But I think we can move on to the next set of the day and to the actual first place team going into DreamHack in a is not Super Saiyan Gaming, but Space Station Gaming. Finding the split against E United this week, and E United is another story we'll talk about in a minute. But Space Station only needed the split. They were able to find it. They didn't get too old and have to hope somebody else craps the bed. But, they're able to secure their own spot on their own terms. We'll see what like I said, we'll see what they can do, much like Trifecta. But the thing to me is Space Station Gaming had a terrible showing at Spring Masters, and what has really changed outside of Final K getting more experience? Thing y'all want to say on Space Station Gaming? I mean, I don't see the team having changed that much since the Spring Masters, outside of a couple of newsworthy stories here and there about maybe Zapman joining the team, but that didn't come out. What do you guys think of Space Station going into DreamHack? What did you think of them this week that they could maybe use at DreamHack that would help them out?
Well, I think the main difference between the Space Station we saw in the spring and the one we're seeing right now is obviously Final K, who has improved quite a lot or just gathered more experience. And I think Anster has also stepped it up a bit. Outside of that, there is really a lack of improvement or a lack of real noticeable difference, which I think is definitely worrisome. Psycho?
I was really just impressed by Vishim. Not just this week, but the split. Like Vishim played. For me, he didn't show this level of play in the spring. Like, of course, we have Final K and Anister getting more experience, Anister in the role. But Vishim really stepped up for me. And that's what I think made them win a lot of their games. Summer Split.
I agree with the Vishim playing a lot better. And I want to bring up the point and tip my hat to him about not letting this Zapman rumors get to him and affect his play, because he stepped it up after those rumors came out, and he played a lot better after those rumors came out. Played a lot better this split than he has at all since, I want to say, Season 2 World, where he was at his best. And he's really been kind of a will he or won't he kind of player since then. And he stepped it up in the spring or in the summer and split, and it's going to be interesting to see who they face. I expect it to be rival. So, Medium versus Vote. That should be a good matchup to watch if they end up playing each other.
Yeah, I think it's one to look forward towards, as are pretty much going to be all the NA versus EU matchups, if you ask me. I wouldn't put any specific importance on this one, honestly, compared to the other Hunter matchups we're going to see, or the other matchups in specific other lanes that we're going to see.
Yeah. Medium versus Vote doesn't actually stand out to anybody as much as Snoopy versus Emilito or Barracuda versus, I think, Anorexia. Yeah, if they play each other, it'll be Barracuda versus Anorexia. So the other two matchups, as far as Hunter goes, should have a lot more hype to them. But we have given Vogt our MVP, I believe, of week 3 or week 4. So he's had MVP honors already this split. And Medium, his performances to the top, like as far as from week to week, who impressed. But he has had a very solid set or a very solid split. So it's not something to overlook. The Vogt versus Vedium should be a good matchup to watch. Giggs, Annister, both had very solid splits. Annister finding that second split into mid really improves. Was one of the better mids in all of the NA this split. So the team going into DreamHack, just from experience and playing together, should be better. But then again, they didn't have the best showing against Dignitas at the Spring Masters, so you never know. They might benefit from having to play Rival, giving Rival's recent performance. So, there's always that. Anything else you guys want to bring up about them, or y'all want to move along to E United?
Yeah, we can go on, in my opinion.
Well, the story of
Yeah.
The story of E United coming into this week was finding a 2-0 and you're into DreamHack. Their failure to find 2-0, like we said, Space Station did find the split for the second game. A hot finish to the set was not enough to overcome a bad middle of the split. So E United is just talking about how their split ended, should be a team to watch for the fall as far as NA goes. Just in this set, they looked dominant in game 1. Game 2 was really, I don't know what to say about game 2. That was just like, you don't expect the team to come out and have a bad performance like they did in a game where everything is on the line for them.
Yeah, I think it was pretty disappointing, the second game. They were kind of in it at all times, especially Rubriciel could have had a chance to carry the game, in my opinion, but he didn't. And overall, it just wasn't that good of a game, the second one, even though they had a shot, in my opinion. I think it's a bit hard to talk about this even, because it's hard to kind of sum up your own thoughts about it.
They had such a promising start to the split, and then a horrible mid 2 weeks. Maybe week 2, week 3 wasn't as kind to them as week 1 was, but then to pull off 5 wins in a row to finish the split, because they went 5-1. They were exactly the opposite of what ALG did. ALG went 1-5. E United went 5-1. It just wasn't enough to get them into DreamHack. So E United, for me, probably going to be one of the top teams in NA for the fall, if not the best team in NA for fall, because I see a lot of the other teams struggling, or maybe not having as high of a ceiling as E United. But just talking about the summer split, it's a very disappointing split for them as a whole because they weren't able to make it to DreamHack. Game 2, like we said, they were in it almost the entire time, but like they just didn't do enough to get in to find a win there. It was just as a United fan trying to remain unbiased. I really think it was their fault that they lost Game 2. I think they could have won Game 2 very easily if they did some other stuff.
Yeah, I saw a lot of criticism leveled at Reveal for that game, and not based on the in-game performance, but based on the build, especially, right? Because they were obviously against a sort of healing comp with the Ra on Space Station, and Reveal did not build into a Brawlers, but he built every other item in the Maze Tree, which is kind of weird when you think about it. And I think a combination of those little things, like this potentially wrong build, cost him that game. That was otherwise very much winnable. And it is kind of sad when you look at it, because, as you said, they had a great end to the split up until that point. They could have gone 6-0 in their last 3 games and gotten to DreamHack, but they threw it away, sort of, in the last one.
Yeah, I don't really get why. I don't know if I'm missing something, but I think Brazil built Stone of Gaia that game.
Yeah, that as well.
While I think I love the item, honestly, it's really fun, but why would you build it there when you have no anti-healing yet? I think the first...
Well, the thing with that item, with the stats and the passive on it, being able to, correct me if I'm wrong, the passive stops you from being like pulled out of position once every 90 seconds, once every 60 seconds.
90 seconds, but there was no pulls on the side of Space Station Gaming, so that's why I don't get it.
Remember who Space Station played that set? Hold on a minute.
They played Bellona for Ra, Fafnir, and Cernunnos.
Yeah, Stone of Gaia prevents knockups, knockbacks, pulls, and grabs.
And they had none of those.
I see none of those, yeah.
Yeah.
So it is a questionable pickup, right? Could have been that he was just trying to sort of match their sustain, because he was already on a Camostots anyway, who has a lot of sustain built into his kit. And with the Stone of Gaia passive, the second one, regenerating your HP, it could have sustained to around the same level as Space Station did with the Ra. I'm just not sure if that was the right thing to prioritize, right? Because you can just kill the Ra with your anti-healing and kill the sustain for Space Station.
Well, there's two ways to go about the whole dealing with Raw thing, and that's bursting down before he can get his heals off enough to keep him alive, or just find picks other places and not, maybe pick the Thor, get a kill on the Thor when Raw's not around, and find these little victories that build up to a win over time. I don't know if Stone of Gaia does that for them either, because, like you said, none of the things that Stone of Gaia prevents, PlayStation had. Like, there was nothing there. There's no reason to pick up that Stone of Gaia. So I agree. But, like, when you're dealing with the Raw or any kind of sustain, it's not necessarily building anti-heal as much as it is finding the damage to burst Raw down, or picking players that are not near the healing, that aren't close enough to get healed.
Yeah, but in that regard, you then start to run into issues with how the different comps were built, the comp of both teams, right? Because you had a lot of peel on the side of Space Station with the Bellona, with the 4, with the Fafnir, obviously, also the Cernunnos to some extent. And you had a lot of self-peel as well, because all of those gods that I just mentioned, those 4, can get away from danger really easily. 4 with the hammer, Bellona with the dash and the old, etc. And so it's going to be hard to lock down any of those to counter the Ra specifically by just killing his healing potential targets before he can heal, as well as it's going to be hard to kill the Ra because he has that much peel from his team. And the other issue is really going to be, was really to me, their own lack of CC, right? Because they didn't have a whole lot. They had some slows on Panacat with his 1. They had stuns from the Faf, from the Gevald, and from the Sun Wukong, but outside of that, they didn't have a whole lot of CC, so it's always going to be hard to line up those Faf snipes, and somehow find success with that.
One thing you shouldn't do is pick Skadi and build Mid-Guardian Mail, 3rd item.
Hey, but it worked in that one set he played.
Hannah's got some unique builds, to say the least. The Mid-Guardian Mel Scotty, that's we've seen that work with some sort with Fafnir as a support, not with the Geb as support. Obviously, the Fafnir was on the other side of the thing, but like you get away with the Mid-Guardian Scotty build with either a support that's going to pick up something like a Shogun's Kasari, or if Fafnir, like the attack speed steroid from Fafnir, something to augment the attack speed. And I know Scotty's not a auto attacks based character, but she's still a hunter. You know, she's still going to be doing a lot of damage with her auto attacks, regardless of whether she's that or she's an auto attack hunter or not.
Yeah, I think that's another issue with the comp is picking the Geb instead of the Fafnir, just because the Fafnir synergizes very well with the Scotty, and the Geb also does to some extent, because of course you can shield her to prevent her from dying, because she's gonna need some help for that. She doesn't have a whole lot of self peel, but it just wasn't enough, and oftentimes PBM put himself out of position to shield her, and it resulted in at least 1 death that I can remember on him as well. So the comp just didn't really work out, if you ask me, and I think it was one of the main issues why they lost that game, as I explained already.
That's it for me too. Like, the game was lost when they got this comp and decided to build those items, or not to build those items. Like, they could have won the game if they... I actually think they were much better hunters open than Skadi. Ram, for example, was open, and you still pick the god that has no escape. Even when you have the Geb, you won't always save the Skadi.
Yeah, you're just not gonna be able to. And I think that's a valid point, right? Especially against A4, you do not really want to play an immobile hunter, because if the 4 can 100% of the time reliably hit his ult, his 1, and his entire free on you, you are gonna be dead in most cases, regardless of what else happens.
Also, the Skadi was the very last pick of the game, so like, you knew what else is in the game. You knew what the enemy gods are, you know what your 4 teammates are, and you still pick Skadi. So that's a no-no for me.
Well, I understand the Scotty pick, because Scotty in herself can blow you up, like more so than what any other hunter can, just based on how her kit synergizes so well together. Like if you don't kill her like almost immediately, she can turn the tables on you really quickly.
Emilito's Hoey would like to disagree.
Well, Hoagie is also one of those characters that can blow you up real quickly too. One double, one triple bounce, and there's 3/4 of your health gone. So, but Scotty herself, if the longer she stays in the fight, the longer that you don't take her out of the equation, the more more she's able to do. Like if Thor tries to gank her, if Thor doesn't get the kill, she can kill Thor in less than 3 seconds.
Yeah, but I feel like
that's just how the god is built. So I understand the pick. I don't understand like the items for the pick.
It's like she was picked to play 1v1 and like didn't do anything for the team. And that's like what do you expect when you play Scotty? Now that she got nerfed, her ultimate no longer makes Kaldir immune. So the dog is basically useless in fights when there's 5 members.
Yeah.
Like, so it wasn't really the greatest pick, in my opinion.
Yeah, it just didn't really work out at all in this game. But not many of their picks did anyway, so I'm sure the Scotty's not entirely to blame, but it was one of many factors as always. Like it's never just one thing.
It's just very disappointing for E United to find 5 wins in a row and actually have to have a 6 to make it to Dreamhack and have that kind of performance in that 6th game when you're on such a hot streak. That was just disappointing to see. I think a lot of people were hoping E United would actually make it to Dreamhack.
Yeah, I think I definitely was excited to see this team perform against EU opposition, because I think they just in general have a lot of potential as well. And now that we're not going to see it, it's kind of sad, but it is warranted, right? Because they had poor games in the middle of the split, and if you lose those types of games, like I think they lost against ALG and Noble 2-0. If you lose those types of games, you're just gonna come up short and not manage to make LAN. That's how a split works.
So I'll brought this up with Elevate about how one game was the difference between them making Dreamhack and not. Was the same thing with E United. Not necessarily game 2 against Space Station, but what if they had split with Noble, or if they had split with ALG? We could be talking about E United going to Dreamhack, and it just goes to show you how important each game is in a split, especially one that was only 5 weeks long.
Yeah. Like, what if we had seen them 2-0 trifecta in week 1?
Yeah.
Everything would have been different. So yeah, those are our tiers for E United, for them not making Dreamhack. Yeah. Should we move on, or does anyone have anything left to say about this team?
That all needs to be said right now. When we do the split review, I'm pretty sure E United will come up again during that episode, but unless Psycho has anything else to say, I'm finished with.
Yeah, I'm done as well. About United.
So,
Well, I guess we move on to Noble.
yes,
Noble.
I have a question for you right here. Is this set really worth talking about?
I have a few things I want to say about both teams, but not.
Yeah, sure, then go on.
I mean, Noble. What a great ending to the split. I mean, from 0-3, not just 0-3 in the splits, like 0-6 to where they finished at, but 7-1, complete turnaround. And this, we've said it before. I've said it on other recordings. This team sticks together, and this team is I'm not even gonna say possibly at Worlds. This team makes it to Worlds if they continue to grow like this and they stick together. Because this is an exciting team to watch for me going forward, and probably the one team in NA outside of E United that I am excited for the fall split. I think you can look at the other teams in the NA and say, what are they going to do roster wise that's going to affect what they do in the fall. I'm looking at Noble to be top 3 in NA in the fall, if not top 2. I really think that this team is that good. And 2-0ing Flashpoint, and then there's nothing to talk about there. Flashpoint's 0 wins. But Super Regionals, definitely looking at them being one of the 4 teams in Super Regionals. Like I said, the format has to stay the same as it did last year. 14 from each region and then a 5th wildcard team. But I could definitely see Noble being one of the top 4 teams at Super Regionals for NA. So I think Super Regionals is very much a possibility for Noble right now if they stick together. Flashpoint, on the other hand, well, I'll let y'all talk about Noble real quick before I go to Flashpoint. Anything I want to say?
I have a question for you. You said you see Noble as a possibly top 2 team in North America. Who would be number 1 for you? I'm actually really curious.
Well, I'm looking at the top teams right now, just going into DreamHack. LG struggles towards the end of the split. I don't know what they're going to be in the fall if they decide to stick together. Trifecta, I'm high on, but I'm not sure if they're top 3 material. Right now, my top 3 going into the fall is Space Station, Noble, and E United. I think towards the later end of the split, those 3 teams have shown me enough for me to put them there for the fall right now. So it's definitely Space Station, Noble, and E United. Put them in any order you want, but those are the top 3 teams for NA right now for me.
Yeah.
All right.
I think we might see some changes who the top teams are going to be. I'm not going to reliably call yet that Noble's going to be one of them, but I think we've all seen the potential they have now with Skillon stepping it up, with Stealth finding back to his old form, with Wowie looking good. Just everyone on the roster really looking good. Towards the second half of the split, I think they have a lot of... They still have some potential that they can grow into, right? And if that is the case, then regionals, hopefully not relegations, regionals and worlds definitely do seem like possibilities. Yeah, which is not something I would have expected No, wait, I would have expected them to be a contender in the fall, just not this split, right? The fact that they were is already a great sign, because I never saw the issue with Noble that they wouldn't be able to develop into a good team. I saw the issue in the summer with them not yet being a good team, but they have proven everyone wrong.
The thing with Noble is does this current roster stick together? Like you said, we don't know what's going to happen as far as the other teams. I brought this up in the past. If Barracuda and Jeff come calling along and Baskin moves back to solo lane, just giving the past, the relationships between Barracuda and Stealth being best friends, Stealth could make the jump to LG, So there's also Divios being a free agent. Aquarius has been a strong rookie, but like if you have a chance to get somebody the caliber of Divios, it's certainly a possibility that Noble looks towards Divios over Aquarius. But just the roster as it is right now, they continue to grow like this. They're definitely a strong team in NA for the fall split.
Yeah, I think that's all there is to say about it, honestly. Unless Psycho has some words.
No, I guess he summed it up really well. I'm just gonna say that MLC Styles has shown us that he can play more gods as well. Like he's gonna Flashpoint, sure, but like a Gulkin and Nox.
Yeah, well, we've already seen his Nox, really. And the Cuckoo is like an old timer for him.
Yeah, but showing us he can still play those gods, even if it's against Flashpoint again.
Yeah, but yeah, I guess.
And I guess I still have a couple things to say about Flashpoint, but moving on to Flashpoint, they're obviously going into relegations, and we expect them to be relegated out unless they make some significant changes to their roster. For me, the organization, if they're going to continue with their Smite team, they have to choose to build it around Walrus and not Shadowcube. Walrus has to be the focal point of any kind of roster that they put together for them to have success. We've said it, or I've said it, Shadowcube's best days are behind him, and I wouldn't necessarily build a team around what Shadowcube wants to do. I would definitely put focus or make Walrus my focal point and build around Walrus moving forward.
Yeah, I think that would make a lot more sense than building it around Shadowcube. Because Walrus is now definitely by far the better player of the two. And probably also by pretty wide margin the best player on Flashpoint. So it's the only really thing that would make sense. But the question I really have is, does it make sense to even stay for Flashpoint? Does it make sense for this roster or this type of roster to stay together and to actually build something around Walrus instead of Walrus just finding a new home himself?
Honestly, that's the key. That's what does Walrus do as far as other possibilities for him, and I bring up the SPL Gatekeepers. I've watched them play a couple times in their Challenger Circuit games. So Mando Warrior is not bad by any means. Adding Walrus to that current roster of Payne, Benenu, Grave. I don't know if y'all watched Grave play before, but he's really good in the jungle. And so he could be a guy that makes some noise. And so just add Walrus to that team. I think maybe, maybe Flashpoint as an organization decide, hey, let's just go sponsor the SPL Gatekeepers and add Walrus to that team. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of ifs going into this, but like as an organization, I'm much more inclined at this point to build around somebody in the prime of their career instead of somebody at the tail end of their career.
Yeah. The thing that I just mean is I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense with Walrus to try to build a team around himself even because there are going to be other teams looking for solo laners, right? If Divios ends up splitting with Auror's going to be looking to build a new team, and that team could very well include Walrus, right?
Flashpoint right now should just, they can't say like this, like an organization, yeah, you can't fine with not having a single win in the professional league of a game. Like maybe they should just pick up DM Brandon and Dust and the boys and at least have some face.
Well, that was the whole point of bringing in Walrus, is to give them some face recognition. And poor Walrus, he struggled this split, but that was mainly because a lot of teams were focusing on him because there was just nobody else on Flashpoint to really pay attention to. So,
yeah.
You can just say there was nobody else on Flashpoint. That's enough.
Walrus just playing 1v5. Now what Flashpoint do have is decent minion clear. I'm saying decent because it's not good. It is decent.
They are consistent.
Yeah, that as well. They're the most consistent NA team.
They're actually the most consistent team in all of SPL. Same result every single time.
They are very good at delivering FP. So there are a lot of things you can compliment Flashpoint for. They're just not the right things. Yeah. But I think that's...
well, regardless.
Go ahead.
Regardless, if their consistency holds up through relegations, we won't have that free FP like we did this split because they won't be in the league anymore. So something's got to change for this Flashpoint team. We'll talk about relegations later, but I don't expect Flashpoint to be successful. We'll talk about Team AI in a minute. I don't expect anybody to really stick together on Team AI. I see that collapse, that roster just going their separate ways. But even with that one free spot of AI no longer being a team, it's going to be hard for Flashpoint unless something changes for them to make it back into the SPL next season. That is, the SPL Gatekeepers are just a good team in that Challenger circuit that could definitely take some wins off some other NA teams.
Yeah, and AI's spot is not even free, right? Because they're also going to go through relocations, if I recall correctly. So,
well, like I said, it's all based on if AI stays together as a team. If the team splits up, goes their separate ways, then there will be basically a third Challenger circuit team added to the relegations along with Flashpoint.
Honestly, I think it's more likely that Aurora's just going to look to build a team around himself. I don't think they're going to split up before relegations now. That wouldn't make too much sense in my opinion. But I could see roster changes happening to AI afterwards. and Aurora just generally restructuring the entire team itself.
My question is, who does the spot belong to?
Well, Aurora. Because it used to belong to Eager, the orc, and he gave it to Aurora and Satman gave it to Aurora when he left. I think he tweeted that out publicly as well.
Yeah, I missed that then. I assumed the spot would go to the best, I guess.
Well, teams can choose their own team captains.
That spot initially belonged to Cognitive Gaming at the end of Season 2 because DJ, the Best, and Aurora were on that Cognitive Gaming squad, and then they added Divios and Zapman and became the Eager spot. So it was originally Aurora's spot to begin with because it was originally that Cognitive Gaming spot.
Alright, fair enough then.
I think the spot still belongs to Aurora.
Well, as I said, it just decides who they name as their captain, and the spot belongs to whoever they name as their captain. It's really not that hard.
Speaking of AI splitting with LG this week, LG is obviously the number 3 team going into the Dreamhack. We expect them to draw Obey in their Dreamhack competition. But just looking at this set, the LG versus AI set, I mean, LG has a lot of stuff to work on, but it's I don't know what that stuff is. Like, clearly they took a step back and they're not as good as they were towards the middle of the split, and I don't know. I can't look at them just by looking at them. I can't tell you what is wrong with them.
Yeah, I think it's hard to tell as well, just because the team doesn't seem to be really working together well enough, honestly.
That's my question. Is like, you said there's no point in splitting up before relegations, but if you know you won't stay on the team, is there any reason in staying?
Well, even if some players don't stay, there's no point in not putting your new team together before relegations and trying to make it through relegations with them, if you ask me.
Like you said, that this current roster should try to go through relegations, is what I understood.
Yeah, but if some players leave, that's obviously a valid thing to do, right? Because why wouldn't they if they no longer want to stay on AI? But Aurora, I think, can always bring in enough new players that he has a shot of keeping this team in the SPL.
That's assuming Aurora doesn't get picked up by somebody else.
Yeah, but
So
which team is
Aurora
really looking for a support right now?
I'll bring up ALG again. We can, thanks Niruma is not really helping the team, and you have somebody that you can bring in Aurora. Why not?
Yeah, but if I think if Weekend thinks that, he's a bit of an idiot.
Well, nobody ever said Weekend wasn't an idiot, but
because Niruma obviously helped the team in, like, he is a large part of the reason why they found success in the first half of the split. But yeah, just saying.
we'll cover that later when it happens. Let's skip back to Luminosity versus AI right now. I mean, Game 1 versus Game 2 looked like two completely different sets. AI was very much in control of Game 1. Probably, if Aurora had built smarter, in my opinion, probably would have ended Game 1 a lot sooner than it did. But then LG flips the script on them in Game 2 and just dominates AI in Game 2. I mean, at one point, I think Divios was 5 or 6 levels behind on a Hercules behind the Scary D's Osiris.
Like, Amaterasu.
Oh, was it Amaterasu? I thought it was Osiris.
Yeah, it was Amaterasu.
But still 6 levels behind. Like, that just right there says how much LG was in control of that game too. Yeah. But in Game 1, like I said, in my opinion, if Aurora had built better, they would have ended Game 1 a lot sooner than whatever it went. Because Baskin alone kept LG in that Game 1 as long as they did. LG had no business whatsoever winning that Game 1. It's just poor building out of Aurora's part that allowed them to stretch the game out as long as it did.
Well, honestly, LG at certain points in the game, neither team had a business of winning it. Honestly, because we saw stupid Gold Furies Fire Giant steals by AI bring them back in, where LG just wasn't zoning properly. We saw all this kind of ridiculous stuff happen in this game that turned it around countless times, and it was ridiculous just in general. Right, you could make out several points in the game, that's all I'm saying, where the game seemed completely lost for both of those teams.
No, the mid laners did it for me in Game 1.
Yeah, it was. I think he was definitely right, Sabo, that Baskin kept LG in the game during Game 1, and the people keeping them in for AI were Best and Chapo in this regard. Because Chapo more because of the objective presence that he had, and Best just because he played a great FoF game that game.
Well, I think actually just comparing was really good in both games. He was the player of the set for me.
Yeah, Baskin was the player of the set for me as well. I think he had 21, 22 kills between the two games, and only 7 deaths. That's crazy for me. But going back to Game 1, where it was very much a competition between mid laners, where they both almost broke 60k damage.
At exactly 22 and 6.
22 and 6. So I was close. But Baskin,
both mid laners were over 60k.
Yeah. But it brings me back to the way Aurora built. There was no Heart Ward amulet for AI in that match, in that game. Meaning all of Baskin's damage was real damage. It was not mitigated by any kind of physical or magical protections from a Heart Ward that would give protection to everybody. Where on the other side, Jeff had the Heart Ward amulet. He decided to go with the Heart Ward amulet instead of the Sovereignty that Aurora went for. And so that when I say Aurora should have built smarter, that's what I mean. The Heart Ward would have done a lot more as far as mitigating what Baskin did. They both did over 60k, but Best's damage was a little less impactful because of the Heart Ward for LG.
Well,
So building that heart ward would have just widened the gap between the two even a little bit more, and it could have ended the game a lot earlier than it did. Just having that gap, because I think Baskin had 28,000 more than the closest person on LG to him. I think I think Mask had 30K.
no, hold on. Like you say that AI didn't have a magical protection aura, but Luminosity actually built their heart ward around 37, 38 minutes in, when Best already had 11 kills. So
Yeah, but the point was there was no magical damage mitigation to help the entire team out on AI.
See,
there
there is
wasn't any
a
for the first 40 minutes for Luminosity either, though.
see there is a reason why Best only got 2 more kills afterwards. Maybe.
Well, Baskin got only 1 kill afterward.
Okay, I guess. Yeah. No, it's just I think I agree with that, with Aurora's decision not to build a hard ward probably being wrong in this situation. Even though they, as always, LG's team comp had more physical damage dealers than magical ones. But if someone's popping off in the way that Baskin did during that game one, then you definitely need to focus your build a bit more around him than you would usually.
Of course, I agree with that, but I just wanted to make the point that Luminosity didn't have it either. But Jivindla did realize it and build it. Yeah.
The thing is, Aurora, that was the last item for Aurora because he sold Swiftwing to pick up the Sovereignty. He had already had the Gauntlet of Thieves and then sold the Swiftwing. Why not pick up a Heart Ward there if you know Baskin is going off like he is? You go for the physical damage mitigation, which really doesn't counter the one guy that's keeping them in the game. So that
I'm also gonna go
a little bit confusing to me. But go ahead.
in game 2. Actually, very same thing happened. Like Aurora picked up the Swiftwing and then a Stone of Gaia, and then he built a Pestilence. Like when Baskin already had 9 kills, he still decided to build a Pestilence. Well, I don't think it would have mattered that much because LG already had 2 Phoenixes, but maybe you should build it instead of the Gaia. Because again, Luminosity didn't have any of the effects that Stone of Gaia mitigates.
What is
Wrong, but I don't think.
Well, I don't disagree with the Stone of Gaia pickup this time as much as I did the previous when we talked about it when what's his
Verizio?
Yeah, when Verizio picked up, because it's much more meta now on supports and solo laners than it would be on junglers. I mean, just the base stats alone. Just the base stats alone, and not even, just forgetting about the passive on it. The base stats alone are great for supports and solo laners. So maybe picking it up in the order that he did was the wrong way, but maybe, Stone of Gaia, I think, was still a good pickup there, just maybe a little bit later. Maybe to get that Heart Ward, that Pestilence first before you go for Stone.
I agree with Stone of Gaia, but not first item. That's what was my problem.
Yeah, I honestly think if you're going Gaia without anyone having the CC effects that it counters, you should have just gone soft, because it's an aura item. It's still a decent aura item, right? That's why Aurora built it, and it still provides you with some sustain through the passive HP5 that you get. So why the Stone of
Just put
Gaia?
Mill
Yeah,
if
might
you
as
want
well.
the HP. Have also cooldown reduction, and I don't get the Gaia first item.
Yeah.
Well, with the recent nerfs to the aura items, we saw some different builds this week coming out of the supports, but that that being said, it's also there's still very strong items to pick up for your team, even if they're not doing as much as they used to. Just gotta be mindful of that.
Yeah. So, what else is there to talk about?
I'm just gonna pop in quickly with the LG inconsistency again. Like, they look good sometimes, and then they don't look good again. They need to fix their... They need to become consistent. Is what I see from Luminosity.
Where do they come consistent? None of the players themselves looked or did horrible. They were all pretty strong players. It's just the team as a whole didn't perform up to where a lot of the fans expected them to do it. I mean, we keep talking about Baskins going back to Soul Lane. Gary D wasn't the problem for me. I mean, Gary D was a strong player for them to split. I don't. Something they need to improve their consistency. I just don't know where, and that's what keeps me scratching my head about this Luminosity team. Is like I don't see what is wrong. They just the eye test tells me that they should be winning on a consistent basis. They're just not.
Honestly, I think part of the issue is actually Barracuda. Not because he's playing bad, but because he's not playing to the same level that we're used to see from him, honestly. Because back in previous LG rosters, he used to hard carry this team a lot of the time, and it was part of what added to their consistency back then. Was having this monster Barracuda to rely upon, which is sort of missing right now. Now he's just a good hunter, if you ask me, which is not going to be good enough for LG if they want to be a top NA team, and it's definitely not going to be good enough for LG if they want to seriously contend with the European rosters.
That comes back to the meta for me, though. I mean, hunters aren't really the superstars right now in this current meta than they were in the past. And you still need a strong one, and Barracuda's a strong one. He's just maybe the meta is not letting him carry like he would in the past.
See, I can see where you're coming from, but we have other hunters in EU that are carrying, right? Arkel is probably the best example. I think he has one of the highest KEAs in all of Europe. And we've seen him have these killer performances as well that Barracuda seems to be missing.
Well, Barracuda was doing really good at the start of the split. For me, like, he had crazy KDRs in the first few. I guess. Like, even when they lost, he had like 6 KDR. Is pretty good.
I just see the metas putting the hunters kind of in a position where they're more playing for the team well being as opposed to hard carrying the games. You bring up the EU hunters being able to carry games. They're also on a lot better teams. I don't. You guys have already made this painfully obvious that EU's better than NA. The hunters are probably hunters in EU are probably allowed to hard carry games because their teams are so much better, and they're not having these issues with pressure from the jungle or mid pressure or stuff like that. It's very apparent to me, and when it comes to NA, that they have problems in. So I see this meta being built more around the mid laners and the junglers than I do the hunters, and so Barracuda not hard carrying right now as like he was in the past. Again, the meta dictates who is important on each in each strategy, each split. It's all about the meta.
Yeah, but in that case, if it's meta based, in that case, their lack of consistency right now is meta based, right? If Barracuda is not allowed to hard carry, then that is the issue behind their lack of consistency. That someone else is not always going to be able to hard carry them and make them in through that.
When I look at it, I think the games where LG lose is because they misjudge the early game potential of their and the enemy team, and because of the meta, the enemy team ends up snowballing. Like I think even this week's game, like Barracuda wants to be the hard carry, but instead just goes to aggressive early game, and the enemy team ends up snowballing, and he's can't do much. Stu. Like game 2, they were picking their fights really carefully, and they got the early game lead, and they won the game.
Snowballed off of that, yeah.
Game 1, they went aggressive against an Ares, and well, they got first blooded. Barracuda got first blooded, and it just went downhill from there, like for the early game and mid game. It's like maybe they should just focus on picking the fights they can do, and not let Barracuda get behind.
Yeah, but I think that's part of the issue, is that they're also profiting from Snowball a whole lot, right? I think in most of their games you can just as easily say that they were the ones snowballing, and that's part of what allowed other players to carry them in those games. Because hunters are generally going to be the ones carrying if the game goes later. And otherwise, it's up to your mid and jungle and solo to start carrying you.
But I said already, they should just pick their fights more carefully, and that's what I'm looking at.
Yeah, but I think there's a general issue with LG in how they are sort of not good at winning these games that go long. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I see what you're...
But just if you look at their set this week, they had in the first game they had two ADCs sort of late game. They had Baskin on the Soul and Barracuda on the Medusa. Normally, if you get two ADCs to late game, you should win the game. They did not.
Yeah, regardless, the inconsistencies. That's one of the main reasons I don't see LG as the top team in the fall. It's just too. NA as a whole is inconsistent, but
Flashpoint.
And, shut up about Flashpoint already, Jesus. But just looking at the rest of NA, they're inconsistent as well. But you can see what they're doing wrong that leads to their inconsistency. LG, I still don't see what they're doing wrong that makes them so inconsistent. And that's just, it's a big question mark for me. And I'm not saying LG is not got the talent to be a super good team. They got to be more consistent. And if they continue to struggle along those lines, I don't see them doing much in the fall.
Well, we'll have to wait and see how they perform.
Yeah, that's all there really is to it.
Like, we can't really say much if we haven't seen them.
I mean, you put it in a better way. You can look at E United and see a lack of leadership. What doomed their middle of their split? Noble, a poor start. What doomed their beginning of their split? ALG, like players not having the same effect is what doomed their split. LG, I can't make that same. I can't just look at them and say, hey, this is what went wrong that caused them to be so inconsistent. I don't think you can say that about any of the other teams in North America.
Yeah, I think you've got a point there, and I think that's why we see other teams being better at solving their problem, right? We saw United get over their leadership problem to some extent, and we have obviously seen Noble get over their own problems. We've not seen a reaction like that from LG yet, and the question really is if it's gonna come.
Yeah, I feel like we went saying one thing over.
Yeah, I think we've talked enough about them. We're probably gonna go into them more after Dreamhack when we see a bit more of them, right? So, is there anything you guys want to say specifically about their opponent this week, AI?
I think we've covered.
I think we've covered AI like first start.
Really missed our segue. We really missed our segue from Noble to AI, but we did it anyway. But we've talked about AI, I think, enough to a point where we got our point across about them this week.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, good. So then, should we try and slowly wrap up the NA segment with recapping just who's gonna go to Dreamhack again?
Yeah. First place at Dreamhack from NA, number 1 seed, is Space Station Gaming with 14 points. Trifecta is the number 2 seed with 14 points. With Space Station taking the head-to-head, that's why Trifecta is number 2 and not number 1. Luminosity comes in at number 3 with only 12 points. So.
Yeah.
That about wraps up the NA.
Yeah. Is there anything else to say, just to make certain that we didn't miss anything? Psycho, do you have anything about NA? I mean.
Oh, not really for NA. I don't think so.
Okay, then let's go ahead to our week 5 MVPs just real quick before we wrap this show up.
Yes, now, real quick again for the DreamHack predictions we did in week 1. I actually think I won the North American predictions.
Yeah, you had 2 right.
Second. Sabo completely 1 right.
Yeah, you had 2.5, and I had 1.5, and Sabo has 1. So you win.
Which makes me the overall winner. I
think we all lost ALG, and then we each had a different team outside of ALG. I think we all had Luminosity going, and we all had ALG going. And obviously ALG let us down. And I know I had E United going. I don't know what y'all had, but I know I had E United going.
Hey, I had Eager going before they kicked Satman, or before Satman left and the other guy also left. Sam left. Yeah, that was his name.
Oh, I had Monkey Madness. Monkey Madness. and I had iMog, which is now Trifecta and Space Station.
Yeah.
Like half of iMog.
Yeah, I had half as well, so that's why I have 1.5 points. So yeah, I think none of us were fully right, obviously, because of ALG, and none of us were fully right in EU either. So those were our DreamHack predictions on who was gonna go. Let's go to the actual Week 5 MVPs that we haven't done yet. Sabo, do you want to start?
Well, in EU, it was a hard one for me this week. I'm looking at either Pretty Prime or Captain Twig. I think they had outstanding sets, outstanding game against Dignitas, and really helped their team going. Being able to find that 2-0. I'm just not sure which one I want to pick. I kind of guess I'm leaning towards Captain Twig, but I think it's close enough for me to actually have co-MVPs this week between the two Obey teammates in Pretty Prime and Captain Twig. As far as NA goes for me, Baskin, I mean, what else can we say about Baskin? I mean, he 22-6, kept his team in the game in that first game. So Snoopy too had a great week, but I think Baskin, just what he meant to Luminosity's DreamHack hopes and really putting them into position to go to DreamHack makes him my NA MVP this week.
Yeah, so go ahead.
Okay, I mostly agree. But in EU it was, for me, clearly it was like Captain Twig. And for NA it was actually more what Sabo had in EU. I would give MVP to both Baskin and Snoopy if I had the chance. Like, if we get to see Vulcan ADC with like 10-2, you can't pass on that.
Yeah. So my EU MVP is also gonna be Twig, because he had just an insane set against Dig this week. Was one of the major factors behind why they 2-0'd that set, and just very impressive overall. And for NA, I'm also torn between Baskin and Snoopy, because Snoopy bring back that nostalgia Vulcan from all the way back season 1 regionals or something. Was great to see. But overall, I'd say Baskin still had the better week, so he deserves that MVP award from me as well. But yeah, we're pretty much all agreeing right now, so that's a good sign, right? Yeah, so does anyone else have anything else to say? We're already pretty deep in, so make it quick if you have to.
I want to thank everybody for tuning in the past couple of weeks. This has been an experiment. I think we can all agree it went pretty well, and it was mostly because of you guys who listen to us every week and stuff like. Thanks again. I speak for everybody and say we appreciate tuning in. So just keep listening. We hope you like what you're hearing.
Yeah, definitely. I was gonna say the same thing as well. So just to wrap it out, that was it from the Tuesday Night Smite podcast for this week. We'll be here again next week doing a recap of the Summer Split overall. If you liked this this episode of ours, please do actually like it on YouTube or SoundCloud or wherever else you're listening or watching to this. You can also subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on SoundCloud if you want to get notified when the next episode is out. Should be again on Tuesday night, as always. And you can follow our Twitter for weekly predictions. Well, they're not going to be this week because obviously there are not going to be any matches going on. Updates about the show and this kind of stuff in general. We're gonna post all of that there. So if you want to be notified, please follow us there as well. So yeah, next week we'll have another episode, as I said already. And I think that is all for this week. Again, from me as well, thank you all for watching / listening. And thank you two guys, Stay Warm Psycho, for being here today again. As always, it's always a pleasure to have you. And to everyone who was watching or listening to this, good night.
I think we need a tagline. I think we need to end every show. Good night and good Smite.
Or
with kind of a finger snap and a flip.
Yeah, okay, we're gonna introduce that now. To everyone, good night, good Smite.